Hello, that's Veronica from ETours Russia, and welcome to the most spectacular war memorial around the world, the Victory Park in Moscow. Completed in 1995, it commemorates the 50th anniversary of the victory in the Second World War, and it includes different terraces, statues, sculptures, the Great Patriotic War Museum, as well as an open-air exhibition with the weapons dating back to the 1940s. First of all, it is located in Poklonny Hill, which is historically the Road of Victory. That was the place of very important decisions and wars events in the Russian history of 19th and 20th century. The soldiers of Second World War went straight to a battlefield from Red Square, passing by Poklonny Hill, and took part in the Battle of Moscow. During long and terrible times, all country was waiting for the victory, and this place seemed to be a very good location for the war memorial. The park is full of symbols, 5 terraces leading us to the museum devoted to each year, as well as there are 1,418 fountains, one for every day of the war. The main monument within the park is the Victory Monument, which consists of 141.8 meter tall obelisk, decorated with reliefs and with the goddess Nike at the top. At the base of the obelisk is a statue of St.Goerge slaying a dragon adorned with Nazi symbols. Just behind the complex is an eternal flame. The monument was unveiled in 1995 along with the opening of the park. It is the work of the sculptor Zurab Tsereteli. St.Goerge Church on Poklonная Gora was the first religious building to be opened within Victory Park. Patriarch Alexis II laid the first stone in 1993, and construction was completed by 1995 to mark the 50th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. 20th century exploded with the hundreds cannons of the revolution, world wars and military conflicts, but the apogee of the disaster was the genocide, and the monument is devoted to those who died in Nazi camps, and it is called the tragedy of people. That is a string of people which smoothly transform into a string of graves. They all lowered their hands hopelessly, they all look alike. That is the last moment of their lives. There is an inscription on the graves saying, "Let the memory of them be sacred, let's stay it forever." A few meters away is the monument dedicated to the Allied countries of anti-Hitler coalition, which features an obelisk and statues of soldiers representing the main allies: France, the USSR, the USA and the UK. Further back in the park is in the Fight Against Fascism We Were Together monument, which was unveiled in 2010 and dedicated to all the republics of the Soviet Union. The idea to create the monument was partly born in response to the decision of President Mikhail Saakashvili of Georgia to demolish the war memorial in the Georgian city of Kutaisi. Further around the main path behind the museum is a small memorial chapel dedicated to the Spanish volunteers who died in Russia during the Second World War. In the southwestern corner of the park on Ulitsa Minskaya is a memorial mosque which was built between 1995 and 1997 using funds from various Muslim republics of the Russian Federation and foreign states. In Moscow, we have only 3 places where you may find the eternal flame, or the man-made flame, which is commemorating the soldiers of the different wars. One of them is located here in the Victory Park between the building of the Great Patriotic Museum and the obelisk. People come here to commemorate or to honor those who served in the army during the Second World War. The ensemble also includes the Tomb of a Non-Soldier, which is actually the tomb with the remains of the soldiers who took part in the Battle for Moscow. Just behind the obelisk of the Victory, there is a giant semicircle building, which is the Great Patriotic Museum, or nowadays we also call it the Victory Museum. Inside, within the photographs, videos, historical documents, you may find 6 dioramas depicting 6 major battles happened during the Great Patriotic War. Within them, the Battle for Moscow, the Battle for Stalingrad, as well as the Siege of Leningrad, the Battle for Berlin, Kursk, and also the crossing the Dnieper River. Let's take this chance and visit the Great Patriotic War Museum with ETours Russia. Let's go! On the first floor of the Great Patriotic Museum, or as we call it, the Victory Museum, we can find the Hall of Remembrance and Sorrow. The Hall of Remembrance and Sorrow is consisted of 2 parts. One part is very new. It was opened only in 2019. And this is the exhibition with the photographs which were sent by the people from all over the world, the photographs of their family members who took part in the Second World War. Personal stories, private photographs are exhibited here in the museum in Moscow, and everyone can do the same with these private photographs and stories. Let's have a look. At the very end of the Hall of Remembrance and Sorrow, you may find the monument which is known as the Grief. And you can see the sculptures devoted to mothers who are grieving just above the son who died in the war. And it all commemorates those mothers who lost their sons during the Second World War. At the same part of the hall, there are plenty of showcases presenting the books of memory, as we call them. And here in the books, there are the names enlisted of those who took part in the Second World War. And every single showcase is devoted to one specific Soviet republic. 19 million names in the books and 26 million, or almost 27 right now, according to the official statistics. These are the victims of the Second World War, the victims which were counted on the territory of the Soviet Union. Those who died are commemorated by the symbols of tears on the ceiling. If you will have a look, you will find a lot of chains. The total number of them is 2,660,000. Every single of them symbolize 10 warriors or 10 people who died in the Second World War. Stalingrad, the city which was named after the Soviet leader Stalin, nowadays is called as Volgograd, the city on Volga River, and it's still, and it used to be, a very key point, a very key spot of the country. So it was not possible to lose the battle for Stalingrad. On 23rd of November in 1942, two frontiers, two armies joined, and that was the great change in the war. That's why you can find out the soldiers cheering, and they are happy to see each other. On the 2nd of February next year, in 1943, Stalingrad battle was won by the Soviet army, and the battle was merciless because the soldiers had to fight almost for every single level or every single floor in the building and for every single building in the city. The city was totally destroyed. Nowadays, Stalingrad, or Volgograd as we call it these days, is the hero city in Russia. And the Battle of Stalingrad is described in many novels and many films. In September in 1941, Nazi German troops encircled the city of Leningrad, which is the former name of the city of St. Petersburg. And all of the citizens, almost 3 million people, turned out to be trapped in the city without any food supply or water supply or support from the Soviet army for next 900 days. Tragedy was everywhere, and you can see it in the diorama. There is no battle depicted in here. There is just a simple life of citizens of Leningrad during the blockade. You can see that the city is disturbed by the bombs, and it's a winter time, and the winter time was the most merciless. People were dying because of being freezed or starved to death. Some personal stories of the citizens who went through the blockade of Leningrad became the symbol of this city. For example, we've got in the archives the diary of the little girl whose name was Tanya Savicheva, who lost her whole family, and on every single page of her personal diary she would write, "My grandmother died, my mother died, my sister died, and I stayed alone, and I think that's my turn to die." Starting from November of 1941, people had a shortage of food supply. So in November in 1941, there was a special regime. Due to that regime, people would come to get bread, only 125 grams for each person. And you can see them standing in the line, waiting for their turn to get bread and fresh water. As all of the men went to the battlefields, women stayed in the city and worked in the factories, and you can see them over there here too. But the artists, the writers, and the poets keep on going, capturing different moments from the life of blocked or trapped Leningrad, trapped city. In November-December in 1941, Nazi German troops came very close to Moscow. They were only 30 kilometers from the city center. Moscow had a very good air defense. All of the major buildings were just hidden by the scaffoldings, but still some buildings in the city center were destroyed by bombing. On the 7th of November in 1941, the troops of the Soviet army went directly from Red Square, from the military parade, to the battlefield, 30 kilometers to the west-north from the city center. And here, close to the town Dmitrov, they started to attack, and that was the great change in the war, because until November 1941, the troops of the Soviet army were retreating, but here they started to counterattack, and then the war changed. In summer, in 1943, was another Operation for Kursk, or Battle for Kursk, and on the 12th of July of 1943, a huge tank battle, which never happened in the history, happened near Prokhorovka village. More than 1,200 tanks participated in this battle, and here in diorama you can see the Soviet ones as T-34 or Nazi German ones like Tiger and Panther. As a result of the battle, three major points of the Soviet Union, such cities as Kharkov, Belgorod and Oryol, were liberated, and the victory was celebrated in Moscow with the fireworks. That was the final step in the radical change of the war. At the very beginning of the war in 1941, the Ukraine, as the key Soviet republic, was occupied by Nazi German troops. And only in 1943, Soviet army managed to liberate Kiev and also Ukraine. And they had to cross the Dnieper river for that. They thought the German troops retreat to the river, and they thought that would be a kind of obstacles for the Soviet army in the way of capturing or recapturing Kiev city. But that was not an obstacle for them. They managed to cross it under the artillery shots, under the attack of the German troops, and managed to liberate the city in 1943. On the 16th of April in 1945, the Berlin operation started, and it lasted until the 8th of May. And some streets of Berlin, some sectors of Berlin were so hard to get. So the painter decided to depict here in the diorama not only just the things which were happening during the operation of Berlin, but also some feats of the Soviet soldiers. Here in the ditch you may find the depiction of two soldiers of the Soviet army who were named Yegorov and Kandari, and they are given with a red flag which would be soon topped on the top of the Reichstag. And the stairs which are leading us from the Hall of the Commanders, we're standing in the Hall of the Commanders, is given with a special name, the Way to the Victory. And it's adorned with a bronze bas-reliefs, as you can see, with the candles and the helmets and the bayonets of the soldiers of the Soviet Union. On the top there is the shield and sword, symbols of the victory as well. On the second floor, there is the white marble hall, which is known as the Hall of Glory. Just in the middle of the hall, there is the bronze statue, which is devoted to all of the soldiers of the Second World War. Above the statue, there is the laurel crown, which is usually given to the winners according to the tradition. And above that, on the top of the cupola, there is the depiction of the State Order of Victory, which was the highest state order given for the Second World War. There were only 17 recipients of this state order. Within them, generals and marshals of the Soviet army such as Zhukov and Rokossovsky, as well as the Soviet leader Joseph Stalin and Brezhnev afterwards, and also some foreigners were given with the same state order, for example, Eisenhower. In the museum, there is a wonderful souvenir shop where you can get some souvenirs which would remind about the Soviet times or traditional Russian ones. So I would like to have this soldier hat. Let's buy it. Thanks for joining us for a small tour in the Victory Museum in Moscow. Follow us in social media and don't miss next program. See you!